السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أسعد الله مساءكم بكل خير من المدينة المنورة طيبة الطيبة. معكم محمد رزق من معهد مدينة المعرفة للقيادة والريادة، ويسعدني أن أرحب بكم في هذا الويبينار بعنوان الذاكرة المؤسسية: بناء المنظمات المتعلمة. Good evening everyone. This is Muhammad Rizq and I am delighted to welcome you on behalf of the Mile Madinah Institute, Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, MILE. Welcome to today's webinar, Institutional Memory, Building Learning Organizations. Today's session explores how organizations can transform knowledge and experience into institutional memory that support continuous learning, strengthens organizational performance, and builds long-term resilience. We are also pleased to welcome Dr. Saadi Adra, representing advisors, our strategic partner for today's webinar. It's also my pleasure to welcome our respected speaker, Dr. Mustafa Hafiz Oglu. At this point, I'd like to hand over the session to Dr. Saadi Adra, who will moderate today's discussions and introduce our respected speaker. Dr. Saadi, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much, Muhammad. I'd like to thank Mile for hosting this webinar as part of our strategic relationship together to bring value, quite new approach. In the coming period, you're gonna witness a lot of interesting topics, speakers, and whatnot. So what we're gonna do is we will offer a webinar every month. And this webinar will address the topic that we will be delivering together with Mile. Each time in a city, we're going to start with the lovely Istanbul, then after that in Riyadh, in Jeddah, Medina, and perhaps other cities. And today, as Muhammad introduced, we have the first webinar by Dr. Mustafa Hafizoglu, who's the managing partner for Advisors Turkey. Dr. Mustafa, please start with your presentation, and after you finish, we'll do a nice dialogue and discussion together with our esteemed participants. Welcome to everybody. Many of the good names that we know before and some new names, they are all welcome. We'll have questions and answers, do the discussion before we close this session until the next upcoming sessions, inshallah. Thank you, and please take the lead, Dr. Mustafa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saadi. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for this opportunity to Mile also. So our topic is really a challenging topic because when we talk about institutional memory, when we talk about learning organization, this is not an urgency for the organizations, but this is a must, and this must should be done in an urgent way. But most organizations are not aware of this. So this makes this challenging. So why organizations forget, and what leaders can do to make learning compound instead of evaporate? Let me start with a question. Think about the answer of this question, please. If 100 of your most critical experts walked out tomorrow, how much of what they know would stay in your organization? Most executive teams cannot answer these following 4 questions. First, how much critical experience is actually institutionalized versus living in individuals? I mean, do only the individuals learn, but not the organizations? How accessible is the experience of past projects to the teams, starting in the new ones? So when I ask these questions, the first reaction from the executive teams is that we do our lessons learned documents. This is not related with lessons learned, actually, because this is all related with whoever needs some information, some experience, are they able to reach that and find out what they want? So this is a two-way communication, which we will be discussing. Can a new team find out what the last team learned in minutes, but not months? And finally, is institutional memory managed as a strategic asset by knowingly with an owner and a budget? So these four questions are generally not answered in the positive way by the executive teams. So we start with these questions, and how can we answer these questions in a strong way? But let's find out the organizations who really understood and tried to find out the answers. Let me tell you the story of NASA, the Apollo program. They say that we kept the blueprints, we lost the engine. This is the story of F1 engine that is used in one of the spacecrafts called Saturn V. So it is arguably the most documented mission of the 20th century. So NASA kept all the drawings, all the documents. They were very good at keeping those drawings, lots of documents. But when engineers returned to it decades later, and they found out the drawings, but they couldn't make it happen again. Drawings were not enough. Every engine had been effectively hand-built. So decisions that made each one work, the adjustments, the workarounds, the feel, they all lived in the engineer's notes and hats. So think about your organization. Do you have those kind of peoples who, once they are missing, does the old work really continue or stop? So the people in those organizations, mostly when they are retired and died, or the suppliers are gone, the techniques become obsolete, and the drawings become useless without those experiences. So the documents survived in NASA Apollo program, but the capability did not. So this is the gap. This is the gap which defines our whole subject. The distance between what an organization has recorded and what it is able to do. And each organization has this gap. And we have solution for this. So what knowledge actually is? We have to understand the dynamics of the knowledge. Explicit knowledge is what you file. Tacit knowledge is what you lose. When we talk about explicit knowledge, it is written down, visible, searchable. Documents and systems transfers it, and IT infrastructures enable this explicit knowledge. So it is cheap to store and easy to ignore. Those documentations are generally the explicit knowledge. On the other hand, tacit knowledge, it lives in people, judgment, instinct. It's transferred by conversation, practice. Human networks are the enablers, and it's expensive to lose and impossible to file. So now we have artificial intelligence. Do you think that AI may solve this problem, making this tacit knowledge being possible to be filed, enabled? No, it cannot be, because it is in the minds of the human, and only if people wish to share that knowledge, it can be used within the organization. And 95% of the value is wasted if you manage documents only. This is not my percentage. Huawei says that their own audit of its first knowledge management program resulted that they had built a large, tidy, well-governed archive, and roughly only 5% of it converted into action. The archive was not the asset. The conversation was. So let me tell you a second story. Ford, between 19 1986 and 1969, corporate amnesia, this is the terminology after this event, emerged. The same company unable to repeat its own success. So in 1986, it was the time that the Taurus landed. Lev Veraldi, this is the leader of a cross-functional team, rewrote how Ford designed the cars. Over 200 units in year one, the car that pulls Ford out of crisis. But when it came between 1989 and 91, Veraldi retired, then died. Senior sponsors retired. Nothing was captured about how they had worked. So the team dispersed. And in 1996, Ford tried to recreate this magic, but it failed because this redesign misread the market. Within a year, the Taurus lost the top spot to the Camry and never recovered it. So Arnold Cransford named this corporate amnesia an organization that cannot use its own history and therefore pays full price for the same lesson twice. So this is the story of Ford. So institutional memory is not an archive. It is retained capability. And it has 4 enablers: people, experience, judgment, relationships, reputation for who to call, and the process. We need process, routine, standards that encode a decision once made. And artifacts, designs, tools, code, models, knowledge frozen into things. And of course, the culture. What we consider normal, unacceptable, or not worth arguing about it. The culture is at the center of building this institutional memory, because when we talk about this memory, it is not only the success stories, it is also failures. Do you know people who really comfortably tell their failures? If they do not trust, they will not. So culture should include this trust component in order to make this institutional memory grow and create value. So here is an executive test. Usable institutional memory answers a question someone is asking today. Document accumulation answers questions nobody asked. If nothing changes when a repository grows, it is storage, not memory. So when I say that, do you have a knowledge management system? Do you have lessons learned documents? Do you really learn from the people, from the past experiences? The C-levels, when I meet with them, they show me the files, the storage. And I explain them, that is the storage. This is not the memory. So it is really similar to what we have as a memory as human being. When we have memory, it is always applicable. So we can directly apply what we have in our memory. We connect the links. We use our memory to make decisions. We use our memory to learn new things. So it is not the storage we have, but it is the memory we have that is useful. And memory decays on a schedule, meaning that this memory, organizational memory, depreciates whether or not you act, because you have turnovers, reorganizations, system migrations, mergers, acquisitions. So doing nothing is not neutral. Doing nothing is a decision to forget at the market rate. So you don't have an option of doing nothing in terms of your institutional memory. So why the loss is structural, not a matter of discipline then? So you may directly ask people to share what they have in their minds, share with their peers. So isn't it a matter of discipline then? So we have projects, and by definition, projects are temporary organizations. And once the project succeeds, the team this is dissolved, they learned, and most of they undocument their insights, their experiences. So Professor George Distler calls this systematic loss as knowledge fragmentation. So no individual is behaving badly. It is not because they really want to harm the organization or keep the information knowledge within their minds because they are behaving badly. It is not. The structure itself scatters knowledge. So no amount of exhortation, please write better lessons learned will fix it. Only structure fixes structure. So under pressure, the organization always deprioritizes its own future. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, this is the most critical challenge because we have deliverable drivens, which always wins. We have immediate actions, tangible, contractually owned, and someone is chasing us for this. So this deliverable driven always wins over knowledge driven because it is future facing, intangible, owed to nobody. Nobody chases you for it. Nobody asks you in the board of directors whether our organization's institutional memory is growing or are we becoming a learning organization. So that's why organizations that in the organizations deliverable driven always wins over knowledge driven. But there is an uncomfortable conclusion. If capturing knowledge depends on people having spare time, it will never happen. It has to be someone's deliverable with a name against it. So NASA achieved this by putting this in a structure. Please check the NASA's website and organizational chart. There is a person called Chief Knowledge Officer, just under the head, under the CEO. Chief Knowledge Officer. So they put the structure. They understood the value of the institutional memory because they invent lots of things, but once the people leave the organization, they realize that this knowledge is also living with them. So it is not accumulating. So they put the structure. They become knowledge-driven organization. And let me also tell you a story from Volvo Technology. They say that both sides were trying, they were simply using different systems. So there are contributors. Development engineer says that in Volvo Technology, they are writing reports because they should. So norms and process pushed people to file documents at project close. So we have these cases in our organization. So people do it because they feel they have to. And there are also a part called receivers. The receiver always takes the quickest way. So nobody reads the reports. They phone someone in their personal network instead in order to learn more things about this. So then why the reports went unread? Because you needed access to the folder before you could look. Once inside, you could not find the right document. When you found out the context was missing, and the author had assumed what everyone knows. So the organization was paying for a system that only one half of the transaction was using. So codification and personalization are complements, not alternatives. When I say codification, it's the journey from knowledge to document to the system. So scales to the thousands. And in the other side, there is the personalization with the journey from knowledge with the conversation to the application. So there are three enablers to make them as complements. Culture, whether sharing is rewarded or taxed. Process, whether it is scheduled or hoped for. Technology, whether it takes 1 minute or 20. So in the 1990s, you can hear lots of knowledge management failures in the organizations because most organizations invested mostly entirely in the codification side. And then they concluded that knowledge management does not work. What did not work was half of it. research puts the theoretical value of knowledge management near 100%, and its actual organizational implementation near 15%. So the gap is contextualization. The gap is really solvable. And memory keeps you from repeating mistakes. Learning lets you outpace change. So may I introduce you two perspectives, single loop versus double loop. When I say single loop, we missed the date, so we add a checkpoint. We fix the action. So this is the perspective of the single loop. On the other hand, double loop, why did our estimating assumptions produce the date? So we fix the reasoning. So most lessons learned processes are single loop only in your organization, which is why the same lesson is learned every day. So Raven's law say that an organization can only survive while its rate of learning, L, is at least equal to the rate of change, C, in its environment. So rate of learning should be greater than the rate of change in its environment. So an organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage. That's why we should focus on organizational learning. And let me introduce Huawei's scaling at 100,000 hires a year. The center could not reach the front line. So Huawei is 150,000 plus employees has globally, and 10,000 new hires per year and weeks for headquarters inside to reach the field. So one senior said that the path they followed in those years was like climbing Everest by the North Road, extremely difficult. So they created an architecture. They called it the 3-1 rule. 1 minute to find core business information in the system. 1 day to get a complete answer to a question posted in the community forum, and 1 month to capture all frontline experience after a project closes. So these are not aspirations. These are KPIs. They made knowledge flow a measured service level. And do you know that Knowledge Management Institute says that they have a finding. If you have key performance indexes, I mean, if you measure the knowledge management success and monitor it, follow that measurement, your success rate increases 7 times more. So this is why Huawei was successful on their journey. And let me show you their success. 3 results in the currency the board actually reads. Site visits per station decreased from 22 to 8, saving millions of dollars. Time to productive engineers. So you have new graduates, and when they start the organization, there's an orientation period, and when you expect them to achieve a task by themselves individually, it generally takes over 6 months, and it was the same in Huawei. But with this new structure, they reduced the 6 months to 20 days. And hardware design community solved 500 plus real problems in its first 6 months with an average technical response inside 1 hour. So you see, none of these came from buying software. None of these came from AI. All 3 came from making a conversation happen that would not otherwise have happened. So, finally, let's hear from the Xerox journey. They say that they had the cheapest currency in knowledge sharing, turned out to be the reputation. So Xerox, in 1994, decided to collect all these kind of experiences from their technicians in a database. And most trusted technicians accepted this. and they started sharing with the database. And a technician in Brazil about to replace a $40,000 unit searched this database, found the tip filed by a technician in Canada, and fixed it with a connector. So can you see the result? In total, over $100 million in service cost saved, $30 million estimated annual saving, and 95% of technicians use this daily. So Xerox offered to pay technicians for this kind of tips. So when you just enter to the database, Xerox offered to pay, but they refused the money. Instead, they asked their name to be attached to this tip. So status among peers outperformed cash as an incentive. So it costs nothing. So projects are vertical and temporary, and memory needs something horizontal and permanent. You see, we have different projects, mostly independent. And each project ends, it's inside this process. The next project starts from a lower base than it should. On the other hand, communities of practice run parallel to projects and increases the collaboration environment. So why communities of practice work where directories and expert lists fail? People join voluntarily because they get value back. So communities of practice are one of the key environment that provide this structure to be successful. And we generally work with companies on how to achieve these communities of practices. So let me conclude with 5 shifts only executives can authorize in order to achieve this institutional memory increase and organizational learning. So from storing documents, we have to shift to answering live questions. From voluntary capture to a named deliverable. From a single loop fixes to challenging assumptions. From codification only to codify and connect. Fund the conversation as seriously as you funded the platform. From ad hoc heroics to permanent communities. So chartering the COPs, naming the leaders, giving them time, motivating them. So you see, these 5 are not technology decisions. All 5 are governance decisions, and executives just authorizing these 5 shifts will change the environment. So let me just give some hints on what can be done in the next 90 days. I may suggest 4 moves you can start this quarter. Run a knowledge risk map. List the roles where a single departure would cost you months. So make it being seen by the whole organization, by the whole board of directors. Pick one painful repeat. Find a mistake you have now paid for twice. Trace exactly where the knowledge existed and why it didn't reach the second team. And between days 30 to 60, charter 2 communities, 2 disciplines only. Name the leaders, let them meet, spend time with them, and then change one gate. Add a knowledge deliverable to a stage gate you already enforce with a named owner. So these are the 4 moves you can start this quarter within next days, and you will see the difference in your organization. So you can only know where you are going if you know where you have been, says James Berg in the Connections. Knowledge management is not an IT project. It is the practice of increasing the speed at which your organization thinks. So the only question left is the one we started with. In your organization, is your knowledge sitting still, or is it talking? Thank you very much for having me and listening to this conversation. Dr. Sadi?
Thank you very much, Mustafa. Really very interesting perspectives. You remind me of a real case. there was this sovereign body in a certain country, and I was talking to them about knowledge management, and they said, no, it does not work. I told them, why do you say it does not work? Because they said, we spent 15 million of some currency, and we achieved nothing. I told them, okay, let's start from the beginning. Can I have a look at your knowledge policy document? I said, what is that? I told them, you want to do knowledge management, you want to become a learning organization, you should have a document that states that this is a policy, a governing document that provides an umbrella for the whole organization, for the roadmap, for the activities. It has to reflect the intent of the leadership and top management to transform the organization, because becoming a learning organization from an ordinary organization is a transformation in itself. I said, no, we don't have that. I told them, then you are missing step 0 from the beginning. I believe what you said is very important. It is a cultural thing. And tackling this cultural thing requires transformation, and transformation has to come from top. And they have to be convinced about it. But how can executives be convinced about a topic they know little about? Okay? I believe executives in most organizations have the best intent and will to enhance and grow and make their organization sustainable and flourish. But then there are certain important things, sometimes some of them they don't do. When I investigated why they don't do it, it's simply they don't know. Did not learn it. Nobody told them about it. So it remained a mystery. So I believe the causes of such problems are far too simple to the extent we don't often see them. So a simple awareness can make a huge difference once they start to learn the basics and concepts you spoke about. Which leads me to the other case where a big organization, really huge, asked us to bid for a knowledge management system, they call it, if you recall. And when we looked at it, it was purely an archiving application. And then we sent them a list of questions to verify, because an archiving is not a knowledge management system. It's not a learning organization, which you just explained in simple but powerful terms. And from that time till today, we did not hear back from them. When I look at the procurement application, for over 2 years, the same RFP is still pending. it's still there, open for everybody. So I believe our main challenge and problem in most organizations is actually awareness. Yeah. So I'd like to open the door for questions. I believe Ahmed, good evening, my friend from Tunis, Ahmed Abdel Salam. You had some note or something? Would you like to share it? I don't know, Muhammad, can people use their mic? Can you allow them to use their mic if somebody would like to ask or participate in the discussion?
Yeah, of course we can do that. Only raise their hands and we will allow.
Okay. So if anybody would like to ask a question, please use the mic and we'll just discuss together. Ahmed wrote a note that this is insightful presentation, dear Mustafa. Yes, Mustafa Hafizoglu is a dear guy. Cultural perspective is the key. Satya Nadella expressed clearly that one of the main challenges he faced when transforming Microsoft is moving from a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture. When he succeeded to shift the culture, results were outstanding for Microsoft. What do you think?
So it is really difficult to change the culture because it requires the thinking, different thinking ways of people to get adapted. So I agree with Ahmet's perspective. And dear Ahmet Abdus Salam is our. This is all about managing change. So you mentioned the importance of increasing the awareness, Dr. Sadi. So this is John Cutter's change perspective also. It starts with increasing the awareness. And Knowledge Management Institute president always tells that start with creating a sense of urgency, which is also applicable to John Cutter's change management perspective. So sense of urgency. So people should feel that we need to start this and implement this. So this is actually very, this can only be applicable when the culture is also adaptable to this new approach, because without having the trust within that culture, you will not be able to implement these kind of things, because as I mentioned in my presentation, it's not only the successes, it's also failures that you are expected to share. So if you don't trust the organization, you will not share those failures. And there is also
perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
No,
Go on,
please.
please.
Okay, what you talked about just remind me, the 4 quadrants: important and urgent, important and not urgent, then not important, not urgent, not important, urgent. And most of us, we focus on important and urgent, okay? And because of that, we miss the important non-urgent. But this is like handling the problems or issues in operation today that prevent us from doing a long-term strategy that would preserve and sustain the organization in the future. So taking care of knowledge and stopping knowledge leaks and capturing and having a culture of learning and teaching and sharing, so that we do not repeat the mistakes twice, and once we do something good, we can make it a best practice and repeat it, which raises the whole maturity. Eventually, it affects the budget, it affects the profitability of the company if you do less mistakes, and you enhance your brand and image and name, and your clients are even happier. It's like if you focus on this, you will find that the urgent and important problems that are not strategic will be like solved if you think and work long term, because long term means you focus on the root causes, not only on the direct things that symptoms that you see. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. And organizations should identify this institutional memory as most important and the most urgent quadrant. So unless they focus on these kind of things, they will not be able to implement it.
Yeah. There is also a note by Banu Akman. He says, great presentation. Thank you, Mustafa Bey. When different experts and institutions offer conflicting but equally valid approaches to the same problem, how should an institutional memory system preserve and present those perspectives? Wallahi, tough question.
Yeah, a brilliant question. Thank you, Banu Hanım, for this question. So, it is not the decision that we expect to be stored only. Also, it is really critical to be able to store the process of the decision. So what are the perspectives that we were thinking when we made this decision? Because different perspectives collapse each other, and at the end we make a decision. So institutional memory should also keep the backside of those decisions. So the conditions on how we made these decisions. In a few days ago, I had an experience on this. So years ago, I was 30 years ago, I remember a huge discussion on one of the ERP implementation program. And there was a tough decision whether to, let me just not get into the detail, but that tough decision, I remember how the decisions were made. And at the end, we had a decision. And a few days ago, one of my friends working in that company mentioned that the decision that were made 30 years ago now changed. So organization changed its mind. But he was complaining that nobody was aware of what was the triggers or conditions of those decisions at that time. So they did not know the triggers, they did not know the conditions, but they made this decision. So then how can you ensure that you are making the right decision? So these are the things that institutional memory should be keeping. So this question, just say that to me. It is not only the final decisions, but the paths, the ways that we are taking those decisions should be stored in institutional memory. Even those conditions may be sometimes more important than the decision itself for the organization.
Thank you. Also, Dr. Abdul Wahab Tahsin says yes. Very informative sessions. Thank you, Dr. Abdul Wahab, our friend from Egypt. And then our colleague from Tunis, Iman Fakhfakh, she says yes, indeed. Even though we are usually in rush, we should keep the important, not urgent, on our radar, plus assign time, effort to address it. I fully agree to her note. So I believe the topic is interesting. Banu says yes, exact point I was trying to capture, path to this decision. So it's learning the methodology, the rational, the how to think rather than the significant answer, because the answer will be different according to the context and the question. Okay, the answer is not as important as how did we reach the answer, what methods we use to collaborate, even if we don't all have the same perspective. Sometimes it's positive to have this type of tension because it gets us to maybe optimize or think out of the box sometimes. Now, Majid Kamel, Majid is the CEO of Mile, our dear partner. Thank you, Majid, for having this series of webinar and for collaboration between advisors and Mile for the organizational enablement program. And Majid is saying, based on your experience, what are the most common barriers that prevent effective knowledge transfer within organizations, even when advanced systems and technologies are in place?
There is a very strong answer to this, which we already discussed. This is the culture. So culture is the main barrier in our organizations. But when I say culture, it is not only the people in the organization. Also, it is the culture in the executive level. So their mindset, their perspective on this corporate memory and learning organization. If their perspective is in the quadrant of not important, not urgent, or even important but not urgent, then this is the main barrier. Once they have this mindset, important and urgent, then their organizational level, the lower level employees should also have this trust, have this culture with the trust, so that you can transfer knowledge within the organization. So when I say culture, it is two sides. One from the perspective of the C-level, one from the perspective of other employees. But in general, we can, if we want to just answer it with one word, it is the culture.
Yeah. Now, they used to say, who said that? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I don't know if Cotter or someone else said it, but now Antonio Nieto
Peter
Rodriguez, Jacker, yes, Peter, said it. Antonio now in his our famous Harvard author and our associate, and by the way, he'll be delivering a webinar next month. We will be announcing this. We'll be sending invitations. Everybody's welcome. So Antonio has a different formula now. He says no. Strategy should eat culture for breakfast, because if you don't have a strategy that enable you to change faster than the market, there will be no culture anymore. You're gonna have to close down. Okay, you will be overrun. So if we are too much attached to the old culture, okay, and I'm not saying that the word culture is bad or the old culture is not good. No, there is a difference between value and culture. Okay, values are we always keep, but a culture of we don't do things this way unless we do ABC, rules that have been set there for nobody knows why, as you said. Okay, and we just follow them blindly, and they get us in a sub-optimized manner. Okay, prevent us from reaching our or achieving our full value of or potential. These are the things we have to look for in a culture, I believe, and enhance. Now, Ahmad Abdul Salam, he says, do you believe that building strong systems rather than relying on individual leaders is the key to effective knowledge management and institutional memory? It's a compound question. So this is the first question. Answer it before I go to the rest.
Yeah, so having strong systems is a must in order to increase this institutional memory and reach to the organizational learning. So relying on individual leaders. So it is not the leaders actually, relying on individuals in the organization. It may be a technician. So if you have a system that really makes some critical people create their own silos, then it is a very dangerous thing in terms of being able to reach to this organizational learning.
Okay. But one thing before I continue, when you say a system, do you mean a software or an AI-based system, or is the system something larger than that?
Larger than that. So it is the knowledge management system, including the process, including the technology, including the people.
Okay. And its governance as well.
Yes, that's right.
He says, if so, do you also think that having exceptional leaders is both an advantage and a potential risk?
Yeah, sure. It's the potential risk. And it's not only potential, it's also a huge risk. Really, it may cost a company to bankrupt even. So it's a huge...
Exceptional leaders.
Yeah. So
exceptional leaders can cause the company to be bankrupted. Why?
So if they have all the accumulated knowledge, if they all know the critical things about the organization, and think about that, if he or she leaves, then all the knowledge will leave with him or her. So isn't this a huge risk for an organization.
I believe there is a solution in the old book From Good to Great, when they speak about level 5 leaders who are modest and whose main aim is to just headhunt the best people, first who then what, and those who generate other level 5 leaders. A leader
Yes.
who generates leaders, he's not there to rule until he dies. He's there to make sure the company or organization is sustainable and even becomes better after he leaves. And he looks for the best succession and works on developing these successions, totally not selfish. Now, this is a different type of exception leader with no risk. Okay, but the traditional ones, yes, you have a hero, and all the system is the hero. You lose the hero, then the company falls down. So he says, while top leaders can drive extraordinary performance, doesn't the organization become vulnerable if too much knowledge, decision making, and influence remain concentrated in a few individuals rather than embedded in institutional systems?
Yeah, this is a risk.
Yeah. Yes. Now, Muhammad is our dear host today from Mile. He's asking, how can executive leaders assess whether their organization is successfully building institutional memory? Are there any key performance indicators or practical measures you would recommend? I think this is a smart question.
Yeah, and this is critical because, as I mentioned, if you measure it, the success rate increased 7 times. So think about an organization, whether it is the rate of their reworks. So it is one of the key performance indicators, the level of reworks. So doing it for the second time, or the level of the ability to reuse what they have. So one think about it. You are a research and development company producing developing new products, and you may measure whether what kind of things from the past you use in this new product. How many modules, how many systems, how many software modules did you use? Were you able to use it in this new product? So sometimes I discuss with some companies. They have some targets, performance measures about at least 20% of a new product should be from the reusable parts of the previous products or the project. So this is one of the great performance measure. So it also shows that you have learned something and you apply. So you have accumulation of the institutional memory, and you use those memory. It's not the storage only, but it is the memory. So these two are one of the key performance indicator and practical measure that I can recommend.
Yeah, and you remind me about Professor Ben Trouvier from Oxford Consulting Group and his great book, How Big Things Get Done. He speaks about the Lego factor, being modular, that the projects, he has reached a conclusion out of 17,000 big projects worldwide, that 99.5% finish on time, on budget, do not finish on time, on budget, and while do not realize the benefits. Only 0.5% do. And he looked at these 0.5% and did some reverse engineering. He discovered common factors, and one of these is being modular rather than state-of-the-art technology. No, the old, tested, reliable technology. Okay, that gets you the good results you are looking for. So it's in perspective. I think we have 5 more minutes. I'll take the last comment and before we close. So Abu Bakr Abdul Rahman Al Juwaybir says, thank you for this knowledgeable session. I'm just wondering if restricting knowledge sharing can protect the company from knowledge leakage. Important, huh? Or does it undermine organizational learning? Because some companies may be reluctant to share their full organizational knowledge as they may fear that employees leave, taking valuable knowledge to rivals, especially newcomers.
So when I say trust, it is not one way, it is two-way. So if you trust your organization, you expect them to trust you. So it is the culture. So without that trust, you will not be able to create this collaboration and sharing environment, and you will not be able to capture the value from this corporate memory or organizational learning. So you have to find out ways to trust, to build trust between employees and the organization.
And I believe there can be levels because trust is earned. It's not just offered for free. So when you have somebody with your organization for 10, 15, 20 years and they proved over and over again, they are reliable, they are ethical, they are enablers, they do deliver, okay, then it's only normal to have them access the data that they can utilize so as not to repeat past mistakes twice, for example. But for newcomers, it's not that you cannot throw all information to all people. It's wrong, even in terms of knowledge. You need to have a certain pedagogy. Give them the knowledge they need and the knowledge they can consume and digest today, so that they are ready for the higher level of knowledge and maybe more critical later on.
Yeah.
So
Actually, you know, I have worked over 25 years in defense industry, so it is a very highly secure environment, and similar to what you have said, Dr. Sadi, they have classified the knowledge. So they have classified which knowledge can be reached by which group. So it's not against the building the trust, because people know that once they are in that area, they will be able to reach that knowledge. But since they are not in that area, they will not be able to. So by knowing this is not against the trust. So classification of the knowledge can be possible.
So it's the right formula and right balance.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll stop now because we still have 2 minutes to close the session. I believe there was a last slide before we say people thank you, or we tell everybody thank you. But there is an announcement. Can you share it, Dr. Mustafa? Do you have it in your presentation? The last slide. Yes. Okay. So also, Muhammad, if we can put on the chat, please, the link. The first workshop is on 5 September and 6 in Istanbul by Dr. Mustafa Hafizoglu about its institutional memory organization learning, 2 days executive workshop. This is part of the path to the new executive certificates by APMG, the Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer, which has 3 core modules and 2 electives. This is a pool of around 30 executive workshops. We've been introducing these over social media and website of Mile and advisors, but we did not finish. We are still in the process. It's a very rich program, extremely experienced facilitators rather than instructors, because they are all subject matter experts. We are proud and happy to start with our partner, Dr. Mustafa Hafizoglu. The next one will be by Antonio Nieto Rodriguez, the Harvard author. The one after that will be by Jan Willem Middelberg, who is the president of DASIN, Data Science Institute. Then we'll have another one by NASA scientist and Nkosi Mina chapter president, Dr. Our friend
Majid.
Majid Al-Asar. Yes, thank you. And then we'll have also Ross Garland talking about governance, Ahmad Abdussalam talking about Qatar, okay, and Stephen Jenner, the author of Portfolio and Benefit, talking about portfolio. So we have a beautiful line of international speakers and authors, offering most of them for the first time in such a program, all integrated under APMG certifications, proudly together between advisors and Mile. And we are just beginning, happily, the beginning of this program between advisors and our Saudi partner in Madinah, lovely Madinah, will happen in Istanbul. Okay, what a beautiful combination. I'm very enthusiastic about it and about the value that we will all be witnessing, inshallah ta'ala. You have Muhammad shared the link, and you can get in touch with any of us to learn more about these programs. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Mustafa. It has been really a pleasure. Thank you, Majid Muhammad, and for our esteemed participants, staying with us all this 1 hour and 1 minute. And by doing that, I'd like to close the session. Muhammad, would you like to address the audience in anything?
نعم، شكرا جزيلا دكتور سعدي يدرى. شكرا جزيلا دكتور مصطفى. On behalf of Mile, thank you all for joining us today. Our sincere thanks to Dr. Mustafa Hafiz Oglu for his valuable insights, and to Dr. Saadi Adra, CEO of Advisors, for his excellent moderation and continued partnership. Thank you for being with us. We wish you all the best, and we look forward, inshallah, to seeing you again in our upcoming webinars, and also, inshallah, live in Medina, inshallah.
Inshallah, bismillah. It's a pleasure to visit Medina.
Inshallah. Thank you. جزاكم الله خيرا. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا لك. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon and see you soon. Bye bye.